way that, what you try to do for the Sahel region in Africa, do you see this book perhaps also being a solution for like the food deserts that you have, in the United States, where, you have in Black communities where they don't have access to vegetables, to fresh food? Do you see it being a solution as well for that? Because you've had the
Absolutely.
honor of living on both continents. So maybe you could, the same solution that you thought about for the Sahel region can be also implemented in the food deserts in the United States, in the Black communities.
Absolutely, absolutely. Food desert should never be, first of all, and
Yes.
that's something I dealt with when I moved here in America.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my restaurants is located in Harlem.
Yes.
Harlem obviously is changing, but it was also that part of America, and that's what you see here in Oakland. I see that too. Some parts of it are food desert,
Mm-hmm.
and so food desert uh, goes by people not having time to cook, or not taking the time to cook, not having access to ingredients.
Mm-hmm.
So there is, it's not going to be one person bringing that solution. It's not going to be one cookbook, but that cookbook is going to help, at least if you can make it
Mm-hmm.
easy,
Like a
accessible.
domino effect.
It's a domino effect. Absolutely, it's a domino effect. But the reality is, one, we have access to cooking food from West Africa, which is more than likely in the DNA of those people who are living, unfortunately, in the food desert. They'll
Mm-hmm.
connect with that food. And that's happened to me wherever I opened restaurant in Harlem and Brooklyn. Anyone from the diaspora, being African American or Jamaican or Senegalese or Nigerian, they connected with the food. It's something
Yes.
deeper. Food is just like
Mm-hmm.
that food memory that's been there for hundreds of years. Those recipes, like I said, that's been transmitted, even if they were like a tiny moment in space that they had lost that connection
Mm-hmm.
because of situations, the memory comes back, hits you back right away. Flavors don't lie, and the flavors,
No.
the ingredients, it's all of that. So the book is a way for them to reconnect. To me, I talk about it in the book as like there's
Okay.
a moment where I talk about conscious cooking or cooking with the senses, but it's really a way for me. It's like every recipe is a story. It's storytelling, and it's a story of a conversation with my ancestors, because those recipes are coming from there. I mean, if you
Mm-hmm.
trace back the recipes, it's my grandma's recipes who received it from her grandma, and so, and then all the way to back when even these ingredients were domesticated, African rice, fonio, and that's like, if you really realize it, if you look at that plate, you have all of that in it.
One plate.
I mean, wow. It's like, it's not just a
Not
dish that
just a
you put
fast
in.
food. It's not just
No,
fast
it's
food.
like this is thousands of years in the making. Not to
Yes.
mention, the farmers that grow it, and the sun
Mm-hmm.
and the rain and the soil, all of
Mm-hmm.
that in part. But it started with back when your ancestors domesticated it and then started to turn it into recipes. And those recipes are traveled thousands of years. And here in your table in Belgium, you're eating this dish. You have to eat this dish with a certain
Consciously,
mindset.
actually.
Yeah.
Yes,
And it tastes so much better this way.
it's
Because,
true.
yeah.
West Africa remains really your point of inspiration. Do you get the opportunity to travel there a lot now that you have a very busy schedule as well, to get like ideas to discover new ingredients, to optimize your cooking skills? Do you still do that regularly?
Oh yeah, yeah. And not as much as I would love these days
Mm-hmm.
with the family, but I manage to make my work about that. So I go back. I do even do work with restaurants in Nigeria and in Senegal, and
Yes.
also hotels, and yeah, absolutely. And not only West Africa, I travel across the continent. I find inspiration
Okay.
across the continent. Yeah.
Okay, nice. So you've spoken about one of your restaurants, Teranga. That's the one that's located in Harlem, I believe, in New York. But you
Hmm.
also have a hotel in the Pullman Hotel where you also are a chef in Senegal. And
Hmm.
then there is the Nok restaurant, which is fine dining cuisine in Nigeria.
Hmm.
And I was able to look a little bit of information up about your restaurants. And Teranga means good hospitality. I don't know in which language. If you could please tell us in which language it means good hospitality.
Teranga is Wolof. Is a Wolof.
Wolof.
Wolof is
Okay.
the language that all the Senegalese speak. It's the
Okay.
most spoken language in Senegal. And yeah, Teranga is the most important value in our culture.
Yes. And what I wanted to know is because, you've been able to live on both these continents in America and the United States and in Africa and Senegal. When I personally think about the differences between Western hospitality and African hospitality, it goes back to what you mentioned that you initially wanted to study about, chemistry and physics. So when I think about Western hospitality, it's because food is as much an art as it is, a science. So in the Western Hemisphere, they tend to think a lot about it as a science. Like we need to measure everything. And then you have the African side, the African hospitality, where it's more like an art, where you don't measure anything. You just put, you just put whatever you feel like putting, and then the meal comes out and still tasting great. So how do you look at both these type of hospitalities? What are the differences in your eyes?
Yeah, it's a fundamental. That's the difference between the West and Africa, I guess. Both cultures, the Westerners tend to dissect things and try to figure out a way to control things. So that's why they can tell you it's 1 teaspoon and
Mm-hmm.
etc. And back home, when I asked my mom when she was teaching me back when I started to be into cooking later.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say how many teaspoons when I was writing my first cookbook, and she looks at me funny, and she's like, "How do you know unless you taste? Unless you have to, and like how many
Yes,
minutes? Like
indeed.
you have to, how many minutes for this stew to, no, it's not how many minutes you have to look for the stew until the oil rises, and then
Yes.
it's ready, and this is how I've learned to cook with the senses. And this is how Africans cook. So, we cook traditionally with the senses. That's why writing recipes was senseless in a sense. But in addition to that, and I always like to say that I'm writing recipes. This is the world we live in, but the recipes are just guidelines. It shouldn't stop you from including your senses in the
And
cooking process.
experimenting.
Otherwise, you miss an
Yes.
opportunity. Every dish is the same and it's different. It's
Mm-hmm.
different. The ingredients are different.
Mm-hmm.
The onions that you buy here in California is different than the one in New York or in Angola, or because the soil and the rain, all of those things. Overall the flavor is the same, and that's going there. But if you don't taste it, if you don't feel it, if you don't smell
You'll
it,
never
if
know.
you will never know. So
No.
that's cooking with the senses begin in the market. When you're in the marketplace, touch your ingredients. Touching, your
Mm-hmm.
hands are so
And tasting
important.
even.
Taste it, smell it. If you can taste it, absolutely taste it. And that's when you start connecting with the ingredients. Then we start having that conversation with the
Mm-hmm.
ingredients, and then you get the other sense that's more than the five senses. Is the intuition. And then that's when you like say, hey, in the middle of cooking, like, let me add this touch of
Yeah.
cumin, or let me add more pepper, let me do, those things were not written in the cookbook, but
No.
you have that freedom because now you're free. That's freedom. That's really the difference between being in the West and being controlled, and then you're confined, and it's kind of like you imprisoned in the recipe. And
Mm-hmm.
the freedom of cooking with the senses, where it's like it's a dance with you and the ingredients, and you are connected. You are understanding the ingredients and their nature, and you're respecting that, and you're respecting the seasons as well. Because now you go
Mm-hmm.
even further, the agriculture, because you're cooking things that are in season. You're
Yes.
cooking things that are, you respect that nature is a bigger thing. In the West, you control nature, and you like, you want to, this is regardless of the season, I'm going to put
Mm-hmm.
some fertilizers and this is going to happen.
Yes.
No. And here back home, we know there's a time for rain, and
Yes.
there's a time for drought, there's a time for such and such, and then that's the time that dictates what's going to be in your plate.
Yes. Okay. So just another question. Where do you get your ingredients from? When you go to the farmer's market? Do you prefer to go to the supermarket? Where do you get your ingredients to cook at home?
Well, I'm lucky. I have farmers market, great farmers market here in the East Bay, in the Bay Area.
Oh,
But
that's nice.
yeah, I'm lucky, and they look like the markets at home. The markets my mom
Okay.
would go to. So they were like the old farmers market. They were fresh ingredients and stuff. And when I'm in New York, I do have farmers market access. But I often go to supermarkets as well.
Okay.
You have to same way of like adjusting to your environment. If this is
Mm-hmm.
what you have as a source of ingredients, go there, the better, the fresher, the better. Obviously, if you can get your fish freshly from the water, obviously this is the way to do it. But if you have to do frozen, you know, it'll have to be frozen, but you can still have good food with it. So that's really, yeah. You know, I don't want to be saying you must have always stuff from the farmers market. It doesn't work like that, obviously, for most people, especially people in food deserts. You know, so it's
Yes.
like, you know, so, but you can still have good food, good nutrition, you know, and with you know, supermarkets or frozen departments or all the stuff.
Okay. So to tie back to this question, I have it from a good source that one of your favorite ingredients is okra. And I was wondering if you are stranded on an island and you have to choose your top 5 dishes to eat for the rest of your life, what would that be?
No, okra stew, seafood and okra stew. Yeah, that's like a gumbo. Absolutely, no,
Okay.
it's a must. Otherwise, you know, what's the point, right? And and yeah, I would probably also choose either a peanut sauce. You know, something with
Yes.
peanut sauce. Yeah,
Yes.
I love peanut sauce. Something, there's a dish. It's really an interesting dish that went from Benin to
Mm-hmm.
Bahia, and in
Mm-hmm.
Bahia it really became very interesting. They call it bobo de camarao, and bobo de camarao is like
Okay.
it has palm oil in it. It has
Mm-hmm.
cassava manioca, they call it, and it has lots of seafood.
Prawns.
Prawns,
Yeah,
yeah,
prawns.
yes,
Yeah.
prawns, yeah,
Camarão is
Angola, you would
prawns.
know that, right? Yeah.
Yes, prawns is camarão.
Oh, you guys
Okay.
have great prawns, yeah. Oh, yeah. Come to
Okay.
think of it, yeah. Come to think of it,
That'll be our next destination.
yeah, no, that's true. And I had these piri piri prawns that actually from Mozambique, I
Okay.
think it was, but it is
Okay.
like
Yeah, they're
yes,
also located at the coast.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah, that's so
at the
delicious. Maybe,
Indian Ocean. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I
So
think I'll add
okay.
that to my list of five dishes. Chebujon, you know, which is the original
Very
jollof rice.
delicious.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
So
definitely.
you spoke about the broken rice. That's not the original rice it was made with.
No, no, the broken rice
Okay.
is colonized. You know, so the
Okay.
broken
Because that's
rice
the one
came.
that you can find here in the stores.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it came, it's a funny story. We have our own rice, you know,
Mm-hmm.
in Casamance, Senegambian rice. We have, you know, African rice, you know, we call it always aglaberima, which is the rice that was brought here in the Americas, you know. So, you know, there's an interesting book called Black Rice that talks a lot about that. But,
Mm-hmm.
you know, so that rice, we didn't even create a value chain for that rice. The French colonizers decided to bring the broken rice from Vietnam, Indochina at the time, because they were also
Okay.
there. And that broken rice, the Vietnamese, that was the one they used to have for animal feed after they processed their rice, the
I didn't
leftovers.
know that.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
the leftovers animal feed. The French brought it to Senegal because they wanted the Senegal farmers to focus on growing peanuts at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, colonization was a business. You know, it was like, you know, that's when they started bringing monoculture. You know, unfortunately, this is not our tradition, that monoculture. We have the way to grow food. Our ancestors were doing it, and now the food system, we are
That was
realizing
better
this is,
for the soil.
and it's better, and we need to urgently return to that
Mm-hmm.
rotation and that multi-cropping, and that's important. The monoculture is a direct coming directly from colonization and from slavery, from the plantation also brought that. You know, that's when you had the cotton field and the and you know, whatever, the sugarcane plantations and all that. That's because of the greed of the plantation owners who really were making huge profits from
Mm-hmm.
those. And eventually that evolved into those big food corporations that we have now. They haven't
Yes.
changed. They started in plantations, and now we have the
Yes.
same
Yes.
thing. And so broken rice has the same story. You know, they brought the broken rice to Senegal, and Senegalese embraced it and turned it
Even till
into,
today, yeah.
oh, even till today, we're still importing broken rice from India and Thailand, and it's just sad. And we're depending now on those, and we neglected our own rice, and
Mm-hmm.
we neglected all our own grains and crops like fonio and millet and sorghum, and we find ourselves in a difficult spot, because when Indians don't want to send their broken rice because they're
And you have
eating
the
it now. They're
families.
like, they're
Yeah.
not giving it for animal feeds now. They're eating,
Mm-hmm.
they keep it because they have their people to feed,
Mm-hmm.
and we have to figure out a way to bring back our rice. I'm not focusing only on fonio. I'm also focusing on all those underutilized crops, including
Yes.
our African rice. This is the idea. Yolele was not just for fonio. Fonio was like our Trojan horse to create a
Mm-hmm.
brand that will
Mm-hmm.
now start to integrate other crops that are underutilized from Africa, because it's important that we don't turn fonio into a monoculture as well, or
Of
a cash
course.
crop.
Yeah.
We
Because
want to
then
make
we're
sure.
back at
Yeah,
with the same
exactly.
issue. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And then two other dishes that you would like?
So I said chebujan, right? Chebujan is
Yes. That was
definitely
the
one of
third.
them. Yeah, yeah. The third, there's a dish that I love. It's leafy. It's like there's different versions of it. We have in Ghana they call it contombre.
Okay.
In Nigeria they have eforiro. And in southern Senegal they call it sosfe. In Guinea too as well they call it sosfe. It's a leafy. The leaves vary. It's either
Okay.
cassava leaves or sweet potato leaves.
Never
At the
heard of
restaurant.
it.
Oh, it's you don't see it much, and there's different
Okay.
versions of it. Sometimes in southern Senegal they do it with cassava leaves and peanut flour, and with a touch of palm oil sometimes. In
Okay.
Nigeria they do it with like different ugu leaves, for instance. That's another leaf that they have.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting, that leafy food culture that you have in West Africa that was not prominent in other parts of the world. And now we're realizing that leaves are a great source of nutrient. It's a great food, and this
So
was waste.
very plant-based as well.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Like we eat sweet potato leaves, like I said, we eat black eyed pea leaves. Nothing goes to waste in this
Mm-hmm.
cuisine. So all those leaves can be into that dish. That's a dish that I like to have. We call it sauce for contemporary. It's in my new book as well. I talk about it. So
Okay.
it's a leafy, very satisfying dish, comfort food really, and especially I
Okay.
like it with that peanut flour as well.
Perfect for the
And
season that we're about to enter then.
exactly,
Okay.
absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. And you can cook it ahead of time and have a big batch of it. It's very economical too. It's only leaves,
Okay.
right? And you can add protein to it if you want. That's just like
Okay.
you and your inspiration. And you cook a bunch of it and you freeze some parts of it, and the next day is always better anyway. So
Okay.
that's one I would definitely have contemporary. And yassa, to be fair, yeah, yassa is like that's
So
like
mafe is the one with the peanut butter.
map with the
And
peanut,
and
yeah.
then yassa is just,
Yeah.
is it
It's,
grilled or
it's grilled chicken, but with like lots of onions, and that's just the
okay.
thing about this cuisine, which is being very, very economical. It's onions, and lots of onions are cooked, cut in a julienne and cooked slowly in a big pot until they
Mm-hmm.
start reducing, and then you add lemon juice to it, and then
Okay.
oh yes, it's amazing. Lemon juice, simple vegetable lemon juice,
Mm-hmm.
bay leaves. Sometime, meanwhile, the chicken, or you can do it with chicken or fish, right, has been
Mm-hmm.
marinated with also more onions and garlic and pepper, and then grilled.
Okay.
You grill it usually on charcoal, but obviously, if you don't have
Yes.
charcoal, you can use your oven, right? You char it really. Once it's
Mm-hmm.
charred, you finish it in that onion that's been cooking slowly,
Mm-hmm.
and that makes amazing a combination of flavors. The char of
Okay.
the grilled chicken and the caramelized onions that
Mm-hmm.
brings its sweetness now, and the acidity of the lemon, and you have the heat of the scotch bonnet that you put in it, and you also
Mm-hmm.
have, like, yeah, you can also put fermented, if you want fish sauce, if you don't have access to our amazing
Mm-hmm.
fermented ingredient. We have something called, in Nigeria they call it dawa dawa, we call it netetu in Senegal. It's a fermented locust
Okay.
bean that you can add to it that brings that umami. That fermented one is really often used in different sauces and stews. And that's
Okay.
and you can use dried fish. You guys have some dried fish,
Yes, we
like
do. We do use
bacalao.
it.
That's the
Yes.
same thing too. That brings that
And
flavor
even like
in
dried fish,
jollof.
even catfish as well. We use
Yeah.
that
Oh,
too.
yeah.
We do
Oh,
that, use that too.
catfish, or smoked catfish.
Smoked
That's what
catfish is delicious.
smoked catfish we put in our okras too. The smoked
Yes,
catfish. Oh my goodness,
it's
that's
really tasteful.
now
Yeah.
if it's on that island. You have to have smoked catfish in that okras too. Otherwise, it's like, it's not. It doesn't work. So
Okay.
I need to have that smoked catfish okras too. Seafood, lots of seafood, and
Mm-hmm.
uh and yeah. So I Did I have all my dishes here? I have
Yes, you had
five,
all
right?
the
Yeah.
top five.
Okay. Yeah. There we
Those are
go.
your favorite. So we're nearing the end. I was just wondering, so you know, just looking at my notes here, if you would allow me, please. I was just wondering because yeah, how have you been able to do this? Because you lived on two separate parts of the world. I believe 7,000 kilometers, if I'm not mistaken. And we none of us are exempt from globalization. All of us are going through this, and it did not start now.
Mm.
What was before known as colonization had already started during that time. This whole concept of globalization. But what's different about you is that you haven't really been able to hold on to your identity. And when I first started interviewing you, spoke about how your mom was really important in your life to teach you about your culture, your grandparents. How have you been able to hold your soul onto your identity, even living in two different parts of the world?
It was the only way for me.
Hmm.
You know, I was either that or I would be lost. So by that I meant, we have a saying in Senegal, when you are lost, when you lost your way, go back to where you came from.
Hmm.
And that's a word of saying that is really, to me, it's like a motto, really. I was at a place where yeah, I'm in New York City, and
Hmm.
it's the place where you have everything to fail or everything to succeed. It's like, and for me, I didn't know the way forward. I was lost. I was like, I enjoyed cooking, but there was no um, nothing really moving me into it until
Hmm.
I saw that there was something really in my past, and that
Hmm.
that led me to a deep well of, like, infinite well of possibilities, because there was so much evidence. It's like thousands of years of, like, of legacy that I could look into for inspiration,
Hmm.
for guidance, for for strength, and realizing that, wow, I'm, in that quest, I realized that I'm standing on giants' shoulders, really. I mean, it's like, because I love the fact that I loved reading. This is another gift from my mom. My
Yeah, I can
mom
see all the books
oh yeah, my
behind
mom
you.
at an early age, when we were kids and we had Wednesday afternoon off from school, she would take me to we had the French library at the time, but that was another universe for me, and I never lost that. I realized that through books I could choose how I would educate myself.
Hmm.
You know, from cookbooks, which was my passion, but also from Africa and the history of who I was, and learning more about my people, and learning more it became an anchor to me, and it's a way of life. I don't see that I would be here without that connection with my culture. I
Hmm.
don't, and I think I'm grateful. I'm grateful for my culture, my past, and looking at it everywhere. When I say Africa, it's not Africa in the continent, but Africa, you know, the idea of Africa, the diaspora, because
Hmm.
I see that richness, that beauty everywhere I go, and I see
Hmm.
people that look like me, and it can be in Brazil, it can be in Colombia, it can be in Ecuador, it can be in
Hmm.
Cuba, in Jamaica, in New
Yes.
Orleans. That's really, that keeps me strong and going, and hungry for more. Yes,
Okay.
this is in a way the answer to your question.
And what advice would you give to the African diaspora, children who are born here, whether in Europe or the United States, first generation immigrants, second generation immigrants? What advice would you give to them, to be able to hold on to their roots as well?
Same path for me. This is the advice I would give to them: is your future is in your past. This is really that trajectory. It's important to think that you are uh, to disconnect yourself, to not disconnect yourself from a whole thread, right? And think you are an island on your
Hmm.
own, and this is a big mistake, because you're like just nothing in the bigger picture. But if you
Hmm.
connect yourself to this amazing line of, like, of people who have been going through experiences and shared them with you, and those experiences are like here for you to benefit from, and that is really, priceless. And I think anyone, a young African American or a young African from the diaspora who intentionally looks for that connection, immediately will see a response from the universe that will just take him on the path, and you find yourself surfing in a way that's like quite amazing. It's like, I think there's a spirituality to it. I think it could be the ancestors, it could be, I mean, whatever it is, it doesn't have to be named, but knowing it is important to like know that you're not alone, and there is a path that you were put upon, and you either accept it, embrace it, and then enjoy it, or you decide to rebel against it and cut it off, and look down upon it, which is a big mistake. Sometimes they were able to make us even look down upon our who we truly were. I like when I was at that time early in the US and learning about Malcolm X, and I like how he said, the trick that they did upon us and made us think, look at each other and hate each other, and the African Americans through the Hollywood, making them see Africans as savages and Tarzan movies and stuff, and then the same trick happened to us as well, making us look at all the others as less than us or something, and that was a big trick, because in reality we are looking at ourselves, and we are seeing ourselves as less as less than, or as and it's a sad thing. So so that's a mistake, to decide to look down at yourself, at who you are. But when you really look at yourself as source of inspiration, at your past as source of inspiration, and you start realizing that you come from greatness, and there's so much so much strength that comes with that, so much strength.
Absolutely. So as I mentioned at the very beginning, it was not hard. It was not easy to find information about you, except for really your professional life. So where can our listeners connect with you? Through social media, or maybe an email address, or what's the best way to find you and connect with you?
So I have a website, my first and last name.com, pierrethiam.com. And my companies as well. It's teranga.com and yolele.com, both different websites. Social media, my Instagram handle is at Chef Pierre Thiam. The same handle for Twitter and and Facebook and LinkedIn. Yeah, it's Chef Pierre Thiam as well. So you can, I'm looking forward to listening and connecting with your listeners.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for listening. I'm your guest host, Madalena. This conversation will also be available in French. And until next time, stay blessed, everyone.
Thank you.